Hello, I'm Dr. Ann Hilty, one of the co-leaders of the Women, Peace and Security Resolution 1325 project for BPW. I'd like to talk to you generally about our project structure and how we foresee this as taking place in a variety of BPW affiliates. Here are women from around the world. You can see they're from many different parts of the world who are protesting war or otherwise standing for peace. In 2000, the UN Security Council resolution was created, and it was created because it recognized that war impacts women differently than men, and stressed the need for increased women's participation in peace talks, because women, as in all areas, are often underrepresented. From 1992 to 2011, in a retrospective study, only 9% of the negotiators at peace talks were women, less than 10%. So where are the women? On the right-hand side here of these UN women's statistics, we see that same one, 9% of all the negotiators. But we also see only 2% of the chief mediators, the ones in charge of mediation, were women, and only 4% were witnesses and signatories to peace treaties and similar agreements. So incredibly underrepresented, even more than in the business world and government generally. This is a UN summit on peace. There's a woman speaker. This is specifically what's referred to as climate crisis, climate refugees, and the need for dealing with particular needs of women and girls in that, and of all people indeed. Impressive until you look at the seats and you realize that very few of them are actually occupied. So another statistic that is very telling is, in contrast to those low rates of participation by women, we have women's participation in any type of peace-building process increasing the outcome of a peace deal that will last by 15 years, and that increase is a 35% increase. So are women magical? No. But to have diversity of voice, to have both genders represented, and possibly women do negotiate and view peace and peace deals differently than men. So that diversity could be beneficial. So Resolution 1325 and 4 more resolutions have been subsequently created as amendments primarily to this, or more comprehensive. But this was the original, and this is by which we usually refer to this topic of women, peace, and security. There are some women negotiating for the NGO working group on women, peace, and security that works with the UN Security Council. That's the body in which this resolution was created. And there's a standing committee now for women, peace, and security. And the NGO working group works with that standing committee. So there are 4 main pillars of UN Security Council's Resolution 1325: prevention, participation, protection, and relief and recovery. We'll talk about each of these, but prevention essentially means preventing the situation in which women can be the subject of greater violence and conflict. Participation refers more to women participating on peacekeeping councils and peace processes, negotiation of peace treaties and such. Protection means if the conflict has happened, then we know that we need to protect all people who are victims of that conflict, refugees, but all victims, and also particularly in the needs of women and girls because there are increased vulnerability compared with men and boys. And then relief and recovery. We need to protect through peacekeeping means, with peacekeeping troops, and sometimes from peacekeeping troops, as we've seen in recent cases. That's also an advocacy for more women in peacekeeping troops. So the first pillar of those 4 calls for improving the strategies in preventing violence against women. Now, there are many kinds of violence against women. We're not only talking about conflict, but this is within the UN Security Council. So primarily, they're talking about the types of violence that come from conflict. That includes prosecution under international law, anytime that such violence does occur, strengthening women's rights under national laws in every nation, and supporting women's local peace initiatives and conflict resolution processes. The second pillar is participation. Participation of women at all levels of decision-making regarding issues of peace and security, national, regional, and international institutions. Mechanisms for the prevention, management, and resolution of conflict, peace negotiations when there is conflict, peace operations, soldiers, police, civilians, having women participate on governments, in independent peacekeeping operations, in these operations as the troops, and as special representatives of the UN Secretary General. So within the relevant core of the UN itself. Here are some of our female peacekeepers. Pillar 3 of the 4 is specifically for protection of women and girls from sexual and gender-based violence in emergency and humanitarian situations, such as overcrowded refugee camps that are completely dark at night, for example. Can you imagine being in such situation? The vulnerability of women and girls, violence generally, the situation is incredibly frustrating for everyone, and so men tend to drink more if they have access, and also to become more violent. And that's a way of coping with extreme stress that's more common to men. And the women generally, of course, are vulnerable to sexual violence. And then the 4th pillar, relief and recovery. So once there has been some kind of international crisis, the relief and recovery measures have to view that crisis and the resolution of it and the resulting or aftermath in terms of what we do to help that nation recover through a gendered lens, considering the needs of women and girls, considering the special needs of women and girls in how refugee camps or permanent settlements are designed. Lights in certain areas at night, maybe more patrolling of the area, and a number of other measures that can be taken. So these are the 4 pillars of that original resolution, number 1325. Some more women peacekeepers, empowering images. So these are all hyperlinks, and we can provide you with this. Our contact information will be at the end, but these are also all through UN Women, who 10 and 15 years in evaluated region by region how well this resolution 1325 was being met. There are regional plans, there are national plans. Not all nations have them, but there's a national level plan and a regional level plan. And how successful have those plans been in 10 and 15-year intervals since this resolution was first created? And this is region by region. Unfortunately, North America was not included. That's probably a bias since the UN is in North America. It should have been included as well, but this is all other regions of the world. So what does our BPW-oriented Women, Peace and Security program look like? Well, we're not running the projects ourselves. We're a small team and we can't run worldwide projects. What we're asking our BPW affiliates to do is to consider a Women, Peace and Security project of some type, the simplest to the most complex, for your club or your federation. And so what we've created are guidelines, suggestions, and resources. We can send that to you. We have sent it out to all of the clubs. I hope that you received it at one point about 6 months ago through the regional coordinators that was sent. And we also, about 8 months ago, I guess. And we also have suggestions for types of projects and resources, links to resources. And you can obtain that from us again directly if you didn't receive it the first time. The second one, going straight across, is the goal, some of the goals of our team and this project. And that's to support and encourage the affiliates who do create such a project. We can meet with you, especially via this online format. We can have an online meeting with your team and discuss the project you intend and lend our expertise to support that. We had, for a while, an online monthly presentation. We're actually now building a library of presentations that can be referred to whenever it's convenient to the viewer. We think that's even more efficient. But again, we can have a direct personal meeting with any affiliate that wants to design such a program. We have already given a presentation on this program at the 2017 BPW Congress in Cairo, the International Congress, and we anticipate continue to give presentations at upcoming conferences. This was also mentioned at the BPW Europe conference, regional conference in 2019, May of 2019 in Galway, Ireland, where the theme of the entire regional conference was, in fact, peace as it relates to women. We eventually, once we have a sufficient number of affiliates who have such projects, we will create a position paper for BPW International, present them with a position as an organization on this topic. And finally, we will collaborate with related networks, women in peace networks. So we are not specifically a women in peace organization, but going all the way back to our founder, Lena Madison Phillips, she said, and you can find this in her biography as well, that if we are not in a secure situation, if we don't work on peace and peace efforts, then we can't advance in terms of professional development and financial independence, which are our ultimate goals as an organization, the empowerment of women through professional development and financial independence. But underlying all of that, and also in my profession of psychology, if you don't have security, nothing else happens. So this is fundamental to anything else that we can do as individuals and as an organization. So our guide looks like this. We encourage an affiliate, whether at the club or federation level, to first form a task force, a Women, Peace and Security task force with 3 or 4 members within your affiliate. And then ask that task force to identify the security issues for women and girls in your area. Do you have refugee camps or a recent history of conflict? Many countries do. Some countries are currently in conflict. Some haven't had conflict in a long time and don't have any connection to refugees, but there are plenty of other types of issues related to security and or peace. Does your government have a peacemaking process or a peace council or a security council? Can you get involved with the Security Council in a UN agency or another NGO? So there are a number of ways your club can network with other organizations or with local issues. First, you have to identify what your issues are in your area related to this theme. And then to review your national action plan. Does your country have a Women, Peace and Security National Action Plan? I mentioned that many do, not all do. So if they do, review it. And if you have a regional action plan, I believe all regions have created a regional action plan. I'm certain of that. So what is it? It's all accessible online generally. You should be able to find that. And you can look at the action plan for your region and for your country and find out whether or not they're keeping their promises. That's advocacy. To select the type of initiative such as more women on Government Security Council. That's like more women on boards. We have these kinds of campaigns all the time. We're really familiar with this kind of work. More women in negotiation teams or mediation teams. Women in peacekeeping forces or some kind of community project. There are more. We'll talk about those in a moment. And then source the necessary funding. Well, if it's a really simple project like getting more women on the Peacekeeping Council in your government, or advocating with your government for even a quota for women. Some people like quotas, some don't, but that's another way to go. Or an educational project, community educational project. Well, that doesn't really require a budget in cases such as that. If you're looking to do a full-blown community project, that requires a budget. So funding according to what you've decided to do. And certainly educational resources and statistics and all the information you will need. And then to develop your own action plan and gather those resources, apply for funding, read the materials, educate one another. Toward the bottom here, we want to engage our members. So everything before that is the work of the task force that you create for Women, Peace and Security. And then engage your members and initiate that project only at this point. And then finally evaluate it and follow up. Discern whether it was effective or not and how it could be done differently in the future. More of our lovely peacekeepers around the world. So we have 3 pages now, 3 slides for suggested initiatives. It could be anything else. This is just to get the thinking going within your club or your federation. First is the category of advocacy. That's a very important category within the BPW structure. So you could advocate for women to serve on government security councils. I've mentioned that a few times. Or negotiation teams, peace building, or post-conflict planning task forces, depending on what's relevant in your area. You could advocate for women to serve in the peacekeeping forces, military, UN peacekeepers, police, and so on. Those are generally male dominant anyway. And for those women who are interested, more of them to serve in these areas. For national action plans, if your country doesn't have one, advocate for it to get one, to develop one. And if it does, advocate for setting up a monitoring system if there isn't an appropriate one to see that it carries out that action plan. Finally, the methods, we all know these. Online, offline methods of petitioning, of demonstration, of working with local representatives and organizations, etc. Or other initiatives in the category of education. We do a lot of trainings and just general symposia and conferences and other presentations in the public. So you could have public symposia or trainings listed here on various topics related to this. This is the easiest way by far to have some kind of women, peace, and security project in your affiliate, because it's a one-off a lot of times. Maybe it's a series, but often it's just a one-off event. But everybody benefits from increased knowledge. And actual training are in the skills, conflict resolution and mediation skills. Absolutely essential for peacekeeping. Skills for refugee women, what might they need in their dire circumstances? And can you have access, in fact, to provide that for them? How to serve on a security council or peacekeeping initiative. Maybe women are willing, but they don't know how, and so on. This is last year's graduating class, the most recent graduating class at West Point Military Academy in the US. And for the first time, the highest ever number of women, and also the highest number of women of color. So a remarkable increase in the future, now current peacekeepers of the world. Third category for suggested initiatives is community projects. And in that case, probably you'll need more funding. If you have refugee camps, if you can gain access in some sense to those refugee camps or invite them to you, you can work to provide skills building for the women. Maybe the women have plenty of skills before, but they can't do that kind of work in their current circumstances. So they might need retraining. They might need new skills. A community campaign against gender-based violence. Again, that's education, but that's education in the community, so it's a bit more involved. Or a community campaign about security of women and girls overall. Or on your own BPW website, you can dedicate one page to resources, hyperlinks to resources for women regarding peace and security. Call it your Women, Peace and Security page. Have a webmaster who just continues to put links there that various members send her. So then you can share that page link with other women's groups and with your government. That's also increased PR for your group. So it's a win-win situation. These are community initiatives, suggestions. Here are some additional resources. Again, you can access this from us. UN Women has a number of booklets and comprehensive books on this topic. One of the projects that was designed, it didn't finally get funding, so I think they're redesigning it at this point, was for a club in Istanbul. They have a number of refugees in Turkey overall, not all in Istanbul, of course, but they have urban refugees settled in Istanbul, and then a number of almost 4 million Syrian refugees in Turkey overall, the highest number of any country anywhere. So in Istanbul, for the urban settlement of refugee women, they designed this program to help empower women who are disadvantaged. And so they also included impoverished Turkish women and Roma women who are often also impoverished and marginalized, as well as Syrian refugees. So 3 different groups in order to strengthen the project overall. And this was about training in cooking and training in embroidery and a cafe for the outcome of the cooking training, and a way to sell the products for the outcome of the embroidery, and also Turkish language training for 2 of those 3 groups. So this is all to promote intercultural understanding, but to develop the working capacity, the employment capacity of women in need. This is the Istanbul club called Maiden's Tower. There are 2 clubs in Istanbul. This one's called BPW Maiden's Tower. Our former Vice President Arzu, who was the Vice President in charge of UN last triennium, is a member of this club and influential in this project. Other projects in BPW, many of these are involving our members. BPW Uganda is focused on the Government Security Council aspect. So some of their members, including their federation president, serve on a government peacekeeping council. In Nigeria, they have long-standing programs to deal with crisis-prone areas, areas that are in conflict or post-conflict, and to help internally displaced women and children. BPW Jeju in South Korea has long, for several years anyway, had a support program of North Korean refugees and more recently Yemeni refugees who were displaced to Jeju Island. And we are in discussion with members in many other places in the world. Jordan, one of our newest members in our team, Jordan is now creating their own project that we'll learn more about soon. Here are some more concept notes and other resources for initiatives your club can join. So if you don't want to create your own project, but you want to have some involvement, here are pages that give you ways to do that. And finally, our objectives. As this project, as this team, what we want to see is a critical mass. We want to reach a large number, a certain tipping point of BPW affiliates who have projects related to women, peace, and security. And once we have that critical mass, whatever it may be or feels to be, we will engage with specifically 3 international women, peace, and security organizations. We intend to present this at this year's Congress, as we did 3 years ago, to create that position paper for BPW International, as I mentioned. And ultimately, we'd like to see a Women, Peace, and Security Permanent Task Force at the international level. But our real aim is to support as many of our BPW affiliates worldwide in their own women, peace, and security projects as we possibly can. Here are those 3 international groups we'd like to interact with once we have a sufficient number of our own projects. The one on the left actually works directly with the UN Security Council. The 2 on the right are long-standing and very comprehensively developed international programs for women, peace, and security. Our team comes from a number of places. We have team members in Greece, Turkey, Lebanon, Nigeria, Uganda, Hong Kong, South Korea, USA, and Jordan. And we're inviting new members all the time. Project co-leader with me is Irini Pitakidou, who works in Thessaloniki, Greece, directly with UN agencies related to the refugee crisis and with the camps themselves. As a co-leader, I have worked in the area of conflict and conflict resolution and trauma as a psychologist for many years. One of our team members is Arzu, our former international vice president that I mentioned, and she has long-time UN experience specific to this issue. Larissa Miller is a newer BPW member and the new president of BPW Miami, the first time we have a club there. And she has an extensive background in refugee work through the Arab states and Africa. And we thank you for your attention and ask you to please consider a Women, Peace, and Security project in your own BPW affiliate, whether club or federation level. For more information, you can contact me as the project co-leader. And here's my email address, Dr. Ann Hilty, all lowercase, many of you know me, .bpw@gmail.com. We also have a Facebook page. If you just look for WPS-BPW, you can find that. And thank you very much for your time.